This video covers a trip in a Cessna 441 Conquest II from Bedford, Massachusetts to Asheville, North Carolina, and a visit to the Biltmore estate. In addition, stay tuned for some exciting news at the end of the video. For now, enjoy flying through life. For this flight from Bedford, we'd be taking our trusty Cessna 441, 624 Charlie Bravo. The flight was scheduled to take 3 hours and 6 minutes at flight level 260 due to an 85 knot headwind. But the great thing about the 441 is it's so fast that even in a strong headwind, you're still making good speed. Our route of flight from Bedford to Asheville took GPSQ routes along the U.S. airway system, going down the East Coast, along New York, over Philadelphia, right over Washington, D.C., and then over to Asheville. This is the way it's depicted on a map, but as you can see here, the airways make it a bit more complicated. That said, we were soon ready to taxi and head on our way. Taxiing at Bedford isn't very complicated. It's a fairly small airport and not very confusing on the taxiways. And soon enough, we were at the end of runway 29, waiting for departure. The clearance was quite simple, and it's a standard IFR departure, a standard instrument departure out of the Boston area. However, we were expecting to go immediately into the clouds to pass through a layer on departure, and sure enough, that's exactly what we saw. Loss of visibility when flying can be very confusing to new pilots, but it's old hat for instrument-rated pilots. That said, going right into the soup on takeoff can be a bit challenging, and you've got to trust your instruments. Of course, one of the great things about having an instrument rating and following those instruments is that you depart out of a pretty lousy day, you climb through a layer perfectly safe, and then shortly afterwards you get the absolute pleasure of breaking out on top where the weather's absolutely gorgeous and it's just a great day to go flying. Passing south of New York, the undercast gave way to scattered clouds, and we had a great view of the scenery as we flew south at 30,000 feet. Asheville Regional Airport is located in the Great Smoky Mountains with high terrain on all sides, making the arrival quite interesting because there's only one way in and one way out to clear the mountains, even if you're climbing at turboprop jet speeds. Here you can see our descent passing through 18,000 feet and as we approach the airport. I try to get some shots of the terrain on both sides of us as we descended so you can get a feel for what it's like. One unique thing is that until you get fairly close to the airport, the controllers have to keep you fairly high because of the terrain until you visually see the airport or get over the valley, and then they'll clear you down for the field itself. We've transitioned from base and get ready to turn final, I've slowed the camera video down to normal speed so you get a feel for what the final approach and landing look like going into Asheville.
go and have a cup of coffee and come back. Yeah. I got it. You got yours? All right. Did you get your GPS? Thank you.
I'm just putting them down anyway.
Yep.
For the moment.
That makes sense. There's your jacket.
And GPS.
Take those off. Oh, hey pups.
How y'all doing?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. Well, we're supposed to take off and the plane's having some issues, so.
Oh, we heard them talk it on the radio as we came
Gotta find
in.
another plane.
That was you guys, huh?
Yeah, well, my wife and the pups, yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, well, better to find out now, right?
Yeah, it's a lot better to be down here than up
Amen.
there wishing you were down here, that's for
Amen.
sure.
Oh,
Well, we'll go check in.
Once you get to the FBO and check in, you've got to take care of the important stuff. You've got to head on back to the pilot's rest area, where generally you can get some snacks, drinks, or a nice cup of coffee. And then, of course, the all-important hitting the bathroom before you do anything else. Of course, it's not as simple as getting off the plane, grabbing your baggage, and going. Once you've got everything checked in at the FBO, you've got to head back to the plane and secure it while you'll be gone. How much you do depends on how long you're going to be gone. Obviously, if it's just a few minutes, it's not a big deal. But we were in Asheville for several days, so we had to put in all the gust locks, the cowl plugs, the exhaust plugs, and everything to ensure no animals got into the plane or the plane wouldn't be damaged while we were actually away. After a great 3 days in Asheville, where we checked out the Biltmore Estate and other local sites, it was time to fly back to Bedford, Massachusetts. Of course, that means loading up the luggage, pre-flighting the airplane, and making sure you're ready to take to the skies. One of the things that makes the Cessna 441 such a great airplane is its baggage carrying capability. You've got internal baggage in the back of the cabin, but up in the nose, immediately after the forward avionics bay, is a huge baggage compartment that can hold up to 6 rolling suitcases or all kinds of other cargo that you want to carry. And while it is up on the nose, it actually helps you from a weight and balance perspective because the plane is so perfectly balanced. In this case, we had light cargo. We had 2 rolling suitcases, and now you can see me opening up the forward cargo bay, avionics bay, which also has some small storage where we keep all of our cowl plugs and other items we use when securing the airplane. got the engine started and the avionics up and running, I checked the weather and then called for our IFR clearance back to Bedford. Here's the routing. You can see we had direct from Asheville to Gordonsville in Virginia, then flying basically over Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, just west of New York City, and then proceeding up the GPS IFR route into Bedford. Now this is what ATC assigns you, but as most of you who fly in the Northeast Corridor know, that's not what you get when you're actually flying. Once you get up to around New York, they always route the turboprops out over Long Island, and then from the eastern tip of Long Island over into Connecticut, and then up into Massachusetts and into Bedford. But this is what we had for the departure. We had a tailwind. The scheduled flying time was 2 hours 26 minutes. You'll note that one of the downsides to a morning departure is that often the windshield is covered with dew. With a single, that's not such a big deal because the prop blast, as soon as you start the engines, clears the windows. Unfortunately, on a twin, the prop blast doesn't hit your windshield, so you've got a little bit of trouble seeing out. One solution, if you can reach it, is to get a ladder to wipe down the windscreen, but it really wasn't as bad as it looks in these pictures. And as soon as we started moving on the runway, it cleared right up. As I mentioned, our route of flight took us right over Washington, D.C. Here's the Potomac River, and there's Marine Corps Base Quantico and the air station there, where HMX-1, the folks who fly Marine 1, are based. And then looking across the Potomac River, you can see Mount Vernon, and then on the other side of the river is Andrews Air Force Base, where Air Force 1 is based. Immediately to the left of it, crossing the river, is the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, part of I-95 and the Beltway around Washington. And then looking a little bit farther, you can actually see Reagan National Airport and where the Anacostia River and Potomac Rivers meet, and there is downtown Washington, D.C. One of the really great things about general aviation and flying up front, of course, is the view. Here we see Washington, D.C., there's Georgetown and the Roosevelt and Key bridges. And then as we pan to the right a little bit, what you can see is the Anacostia Bridge, the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, which is the Beltway we mentioned. Up above it, to the right there, in the upper right-hand corner, you can see Andrews Air Force Base with its 2 runways and the large hangar at upper left, which is where the 2 DC-25 747s that are Air Force 1 are based. There's the Wilson Bridge again. And then as we pan over to the left, you can actually get a really good view of Reagan National Airport right there with its runways, and see how close it is located to downtown. You just have to love the great views and the great opportunities that general aviation gives you as a pilot. As we continued flying along, we went right over Andrews Air Force Base, or took it right down the right side, and there was a great view. Here you can actually see in the lower right-hand corner the large hangar where the Air Force One VC-25s are based. This is looking at the Air Force ramp at the near side and the Navy ramp at the far side. And then looking a little bit farther, you can see the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, which crosses between the western side and the eastern shore of Maryland, and immediately below it is the city of Annapolis, the state capital of Maryland, and home to one of my favorite places where I spent a lovely 4 years, the United States Naval Academy. Just a little bit farther north of Annapolis by air is the town of Baltimore and its famous Inner Harbor, where you've got lots of great sightseeing, restaurants, and of course the homes of the Baltimore Ravens and the Baltimore Orioles. Passing north of Baltimore, pretty quickly you can see the Delaware Bay, the mouth of the Delaware River, and then as we take a look up the river, you can see Philadelphia. Down in the lower right-hand corner, just on the banks of the river, is Philadelphia International Airport, and then Greater Philadelphia immediately north of it, and then looking up into Norristown and the northern suburbs of the city. For those of you who haven't spent much time in general aviation or flying, here's what we can see up in the cockpit. This is the GPS moving map. You can see where the Delaware River, Philadelphia, is in the circle in the upper left-hand corner, and we're flying over New Jersey currently. You can see our speed. This is an older GPS that doesn't have a map, but still has a wonderful flight management system to actually have all the airways and everything. You can see we're headed towards Deer Park in New Jersey. And then taking a look outside, there we can take a lovely look at New Jersey, the coast with the Atlantic Ocean, and looking behind the wing on the right-hand side, believe it or not, that is Atlantic City. I'll zoom in a little bit and you can see some of the casinos and former casinos, as well as that famous Atlantic City boardwalk and the harbor immediately around Atlantic City. That is Atlantic City International Airport, or at least Atlantic City Airport, where so many people fly in and out to go to the city. Further up New Jersey is McGuire Air Force Base, home to many of the Air Force's large cargo and transport aircraft. Here's the flight line where you can see a ton of C-5s and C-17s lined up, waiting to go. As you can see, while there were scattered clouds, it was an unusually clear day. Here we are at the northern end of New Jersey, approaching Atlantic City. That's actually Long Island and Kennedy Airport in the distance. And ATC, as I had predicted, had routed us to go east of New York, up Long Island and into Connecticut. But as a result of the great visibility and the fact that they were descending us here, we're passing through about 18,000 feet here, we actually got a pretty decent view of New York Harbor, Manhattan, Statue of Liberty, and New York City. We've got about a minute of video here that I'm just going to let run and let you actually enjoy a view of New York from the air. Here's a great view of Long Island. There's John F. Kennedy Airport. Then looking to the left, there's New York Harbor. You can barely make out the Statue of Liberty, but you can clearly see the Battery, downtown New York, where the Freedom Tower and the World Trade Center is located, and then Central Park, right in the middle of New York City. On the left is the Hudson River and the George Washington Bridge, and on the right you can see the East River wrapping around LaGuardia Airport and headed into Long Island Sound. After we passed by New York, we got the expected routing up Long Island, a left turn into Connecticut, and then routing into central Massachusetts and into Bedford. Unfortunately, I didn't get much footage of that because it's a fairly complicated arrival with a lot of step downs, a lot of traffic, and it requires some precise navigation and coordination between the crew. Here you can see as we're making our final arrival into Bedford, Massachusetts at Hanscom Field, former Hanscom Air Force Base. Now for the news that I mentioned at the start of the video. This was a planned final trip in Cessna 441 on November 624 Charlie Bravo, because the owner had made the decision to sell the airplane. So there will no longer be any videos flying in this wonderful and very powerful aircraft. At the time this video is being posted, she's still on the market, so if anybody's looking for a really great and capable airplane, you can take a look and find her online. So this video is going to be making a bit of a change. I alluded to it earlier, but I'm going to be proceeding down a different path going forward. I will still be flying, and when I do, I'll post some videos, but there's something else that's going to be taking place that I think you'll find equally interesting. And so we're going to actually start posting videos on a different kind of travel, a little bit slower, but equally fun and equally popular for YouTube followers. Here's a little heads up of what you can expect to see coming in videos in the coming weeks as we make that shift. As always, remember to subscribe, hit that like button, and check back for some very interesting news and exciting news in the coming weeks.